Hello, and welcome to my channel. If you've been here before, welcome back. My name is Alfonso Peluso, and I'm a Studio Associate Professor in the College of Architecture at IIT, the home of the legendary Mies van der Rohe, and I'm adjunct faculty at Columbia College Chicago in the Interior Architecture program. Shout out to all my students. I hope you're doing well. It is the start of a new semester. It is the start of fall 2021. I hope everyone is doing well, and I hope you're ready for a fantastic school year. All right, this video is going to be looking at profiling. So what is profiling in a CNC world? Well, profiling can be used to draw lines, so to speak. So mill down into a piece of material, drawing lines. Most often it's used for cutting fully through material, so cutting out pieces of your model. So it's one of the most used machining operations, which is profiling. And this is kind of part 2 of my video of making a nameplate. Okay, and the first part of it was engraving. So if I right click here and I simulate it, so this is just looks at engraving my last name into a 6-inch by 12-inch piece of wood. So that's what that is. That's 6 inches deep by 12 inches long. So now I want to make this smaller. I want to actually make it 4 inches by 10 inches and cut that 4-inch by 10-inch plaque, so to speak, out of this wood stock material. So we're going to go ahead and do that with profiling. So when I simulate, my button goes over to simulate, but if I go back to program, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take layer 0 and I'm going to call this profiling. Okay, make sure that's current. And I'm going to take this line and I'm going to offset it. And I'm going to offset it 1 inch. Okay, so that's going to be my profile line. That's what I'm going to use to cut out. So something to be aware of. This material is going to be fastened down by some screws. And I'm going to want to make sure that my end mill does not come in contact with those screws. So I have an inch by inch, which is plenty of room. So if I put something a ½ inch away from the corners, I should be good to go. Now my mill size is not 0. I do have to account for that. My mill size is 1/4 inch. So I actually have about 3/4 of an inch before I run into that screw. So something to think about. Okay. All right. So now I'm going to go ahead under setup and I'm going to go to machining operations. And this is going to be a 2-axis machining operation. And this is called profiling. So I'm going to choose that. Okay, I have to pick the geometry. So first thing I'm going to do is pick the geometry that I'm going to profile, or pick the geometry that I'm going to cut. So I go down to select curve edge regions and I go ahead and select that, enter. Okay, that puts that there, calls it a drive region. Next I go over to tool. So this VMill1, that's set up from the engraving. So if you're looking to learn engraving, you can go and look at my engraving video. If you're just here for profiling, that's fine. So I'm going to set up a new end mill. So I'm going to click on Edit, Create, Select Tool. And I'm going to change this one to a flat mill. Okay, so there's my flat mill. And my diameter of this, so my diameter is going to be 1/4 inch, so 0.25. And then my tool length is going to be 1.5. Okay, so that's all I really need to set, is the diameter and the length. So that's different for everybody working on their CNC, depending on that tool size. So you need to know at least the diameter and at least the length of it. And then the tool number. Okay, so the tool number right now is set to 2. So you have to know, if you have an automatic tool changer, what that tool number is. If you don't have an automatic tool changer, this can just be set to 1. But since I set the engraving to 1, I'm going to set this tool number, or I set the engraver to 2, I'm going to set this tool number to 1, and I'm going to be double checking that. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and save this as a new tool. Tool number is repeated, so we'll take another look at that. So let's set this to tool number 2. Okay. Alright, so let's check this out. So my V-mill, just going to double click on my V-mill, and that's tool number 1. I'm going to make that tool number 2. Save edits to tool, click OK. I'm going to go ahead now and make a new tool. So edit, create, select tool. This is going to be my flat mill. I'm going to make this 0.25. I had some trouble with this in the last video too, and I was making a new tool, so we'll take another look at it. Okay, so save as new tool. Okay, so it's giving me the same trouble it was before. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make the tool, and then I'm going to edit the tool. That's the way I'm going to do it. So I don't know if you'll have the same trouble on your end, but we'll see. So we're going to make the tool and then edit the tool. So I'm going to go to edit, create, select tool. I'm going to make my flat mill just exactly the way they have it. I'm going to click on save as new tool, click OK. It puts it here, so no issues there. I'm going to go in now and choose edit and go ahead and edit that tool, so make it 0.25. So if somebody knows why that is happening to me, just let me know in the comments. That'd be awesome, because I'm having to create it and then edit it, and I'd like to do it all at once. So now I'm just making it 0.25 by 1.5 and clicking save edits to tool. Didn't like that. Let's try it again. .25 by 1.5. Click out of it so it updates it. Doesn't like it. I'm going to come back to it. Okay. Next one, feeds and speeds. All right, so we're milling into wood, so the speed of the spindle, how fast it spins, we're going to want that to be 16,000. Okay, be careful with that. Make sure it's not 16 or 1600, but 16,000. Now we have plunge, approach, and engage. So you see this little diagram here that I have to the right. So this is the end mill. So as it plunges down toward the material, that's going to be a certain speed. And then as it approaches the material, that's going to be another speed. And then as it engages will be another speed. And then as it cuts through. So I like keeping all three of those the same. So I'm going to use 100 for those. So my plunge, approach, and engage, I'm going to have at 100. And then my cut, when it's actually cutting through the material, I'm going to make that go faster. So that's going to be 200. And then as it leaves the material, I'm going to use that same setting of 200. And then as it departs the material from the material for good, that's also going to be 200. So 100 for the first three and 200 for the second three. Okay. Clearance plane. I'm going to go ahead and set this up. So this is, the clearance plane is when it's making the profile cut and it's moving around after it's making the cut, and then it's just moving around, the end mill is moving around above the stock. How high do you want it to move around? So we're going to do that at the stock max Z plus 1/4 of an inch. Okay, So it's going to hover. You see this little red plane trying to orbit, so you can see that. I know it's a little hard to see, but that's 1/4 inch above the stock material. Okay, so we'll leave the default for the cut transfer method to use the clearance plane of stock max Z plus a distance of 1/4 inch. Now we'll go over to cut parameters. Okay, so the cut direction, let's start there. So our cut direction, we want this to be a conventional cut, an upcut, so that when it, what's nice about this is when it leaves the material, it doesn't break away so much of the wood. So it looks nice and clean when it's leaving the material. Okay, so that's going to be our upcut. All right, now if I go down a little further, I'm going down to use outside inside for closed curves, because we do have a closed curve that we're milling around. And where do we want that end mill to be? Do I want it to be on the inside of that, or do I want it to be on the outside? Well, I'm going to put it on the outside so that it's exactly 10 by 4. So I'm going to click outside. Okay, so those are my cut parameters. Now I'm going to go over to my cut levels. Okay, so for cut levels, my total depth. So this is, you have to know your stock height. And my stock height is about 0.48 is the actual dimension of it. Okay, and it's, close to 0.5, close to a 1/2 inch. But I don't want to, mill down too far into the bed of my CNC machine. So I'm going to set the total cut depth of that. I'm going to set that to 0.48. Okay, and then I have a rough depth and I have a finished depth. So my total is 0.48, but I can't just plunge all the way through the material, or else I'm going to break the end mill. So I don't want to break it. So what I can do is I can plunge down or cut down 1/2 of the diameter. So that's one of these equations you want to know, 1/2 the diameter of the end mill. So in this case, 1/2 the diameter of the end mill is going to be 0.125. It's going to be 1/8 of an inch. Okay, and then that changes my finished depth. Okay, so let's look down here. My rough depth cut, the first one, is 0.125, and then I don't want to do 0.125 and then 0.355. Okay, I want to step this down in increments of 0.125. So this is a little tricky, a little hard to comprehend at first, but you want to make sure that both of these are set to 0.125, and we'll look at that in a preview in a second here. Okay, so 0.125 for both of those. Basically, it's going to do as many cuts as it needs to get to the finished depth. So it's going to do one at 0.125, and then it's going to do another one at 0.125 until it makes it all the way through this finished depth. Okay, so that's cut levels. Let's go to entry exit. These are going to be all set to none. Now they weren't set to none with engraving by default, but we're going to set those to none for entry exit. We're going to go to advanced cut parameters. Okay, and this is where we're going to turn on our bridges. So I'm going to make my bridges rectangular. So we'll see what this is. This is what a bridge is it leaves material. It doesn't cut all the way through, so that this piece of stock doesn't just kind of fly out of the machine. Okay, so our bridge height is going to be the total height of 0.48. I'll just make it what I set for the stock size, and I'm going to go over that in a second. We didn't go over that in the beginning, but I'll go over the stock that we set up on the engraving video. So this is 0.5. Bridge length of 0.2 is fine. Number of bridges, it's up to you how many bridges you want. In this case, we can have 2 bridges. Okay. Cornering parameters, I'm not going to do anything there. Sorting, I'll leave that as the default, and I'll go ahead and click on generate. Okay, now I'm going to move this below. Okay, so let's go ahead Now you see the lines here, and something I didn't talk about on the engraving video is that it shows the geometry, it previews the geometry different for straight lines than it does curved lines, at least the color. So straight lines and curves are different colors. So let's go back to 2.5. So straight lines in this case are the light blue, and curves are the dark blue. And then this is where it's jumping over and making the little bridge. So let's go ahead and simulate this so you get a better idea. So this is the 1/2 inch. This is still the 1/2 inch end mill, which we want to get that down to the 1/4 inch so that we can see that a lot smaller. So you can see we're running out of room for our little screws, but we'll have enough room to attach those. So when it's done with that profiling, it's still connected to the main material. It's not going to fly out of there. It's not going to move out of there and ruin your piece of stock. So it's a good idea to get used to using bridges. Okay. All right. So we got to fix the end mill diameter. That's something we got to fix. But just to go through, recap something that was in the engraving video. So we're using our machine, our 3-axis machine. The post processor that we're using is a Shop Saver Win CNC ATC. ATC stands for Automatic Tool Changer. So if I double click on that, you want to find, ask your CNC person what post processor they're going to be using or want you to use. So there's a whole bunch of those that you can choose from. Our stock, we automatically had it find the bounding box that we drew, which in this case is this 1/2 inch height, and it's 12 in length by 6 inches in depth. Okay, we don't have to do anything for fixtures. Okay, so let's see if we can figure out this tool. So I'm going to double click on 2.5 axis, wait for that to come up. I'm going to go over to Tool. I'm on Flat Mill. I mean, if I expand this, it's just saying what it's using. The V mill is used for engraving. The flat mill is used for 2.5 axis profiling. Okay, I have this flat mill selected. I'm going to go to Edit, Create, Select Tool. Attempted and unsupported, yeah. Holy cow. Amazing. Wow, never seen that happen before. Alright, so that crashed Rhino. Alright, so I'm going to have to just do that part separately, so get a chance to look at that. Let's see what happens when I automatically open the file. Okay. Well, I knew it wasn't going to save the Rhino milling. Alright, so I'm going to open up another file that I have. Okay, so if you don't see your Rhino Cam windows to begin with, you go ahead and click on Rhino Cam 2021, and you click on Mill. Okay. So we want to change that particular tool to be, for our profiling, we want that to be a 1/2 inch. So we'll go over to Tool, or not 1/2 inch, but 1/4 inch. So we're going to click on Flat Mill, and we're going to click on Edit, Create, Select Tool. And this one is already set to 0.25, so I'm going to set it to 0.5. Okay, so it let me change it. So I'm not really sure exactly why we were getting that error. Let's see if we can change it. Let's hit Generate, and let's change it back now. Okay, let me change it. Alright, so I'm not really sure why I was getting that error. But now, as a final thing that you need to do is you need to output this. So you need to output this G code or numeric code. So you would right click on the word setup and you would choose post. Okay, it's not going to let me post it because I'm working in demo mode. But then that will create the NC file for you to bring to your CNC machine. Okay, anything else I need to cover? So if you haven't looked at the engraving video, I'm going to put a link to it in the upper right. You can go ahead and click on that and watch that video. So these two videos together will show you how to make a little nameplate. If you like this video, go ahead and subscribe to my YouTube channel. What are you waiting for? I just hit 9,000 subscribers. Don't be left out. Okay, so go ahead and click on subscribe. Click on the little bell to receive all the notifications. There's something there for everyone. Now we're getting into a series of CNC videos. Also, go ahead and connect with me on Instagram at my first name Alfonso _ my last name Peluso. See what I've been up to with my family this past summer. We took a road trip to New York, and also see what I'm up to with my students I was teaching this summer. So you'll see what we're going to be doing in the fall semester. All right. I will see you on the next one.